Welcome, everybody. Great to see you. Thank you so much and welcome to the annual Emily Dickinson Poetry Walk. This tradition has been going on for about 38 years, we think. It was initiated by a group of Amherst-based Dickinson enthusiasts, and it was adopted by the Emily Dickinson Museum. And today it continues to draw new and returning devotees each year. I'm Brooke Steinhauser, Program Director at the museum, and I will be hosting this event with my colleagues Elizabeth Bradley, Marty Pearson-Buell, and Jane Wald. Today, we commemorate the 136th anniversary of Dickinson's death. This year's Poetry Walk is held virtually while the museum is still closed for the pandemic and for an exciting restoration project that will return the Homestead interiors to their 19th century appearance. A silver lining of this virtual platform is that we're welcoming participants today from all around the world. And if you'd like, now would be a great time to chime in the chat and let us know where it is that you're coming from. And some folks have already begun to do that. Hello, Kittery, Maine. I used to live in Kittery, Maine. Hello from Spain and Cape Cod, and Brazil, Italy, Mexico, Ohio, Texas, Washington, D.C., Ecuador. This is just always so exciting. Shanghai, Australia. Thank you to those of you especially who have joined us at very odd times of your day just to be here with us live. We're really honored. So during the next hour, we will be virtually visiting 7 locations that are significant to the life of Emily Dickinson. And at each stop, we'll be sharing a bit about the location along with corresponding objects from the museum's collection. So here to tell you more about the museum's collection and our ongoing work to catalog it is our Executive Director, Jane Wald.
Yes, hello everyone. So delighted to be with you today for this annual poetry walk and welcome. So I'm coming to you from Amherst, Massachusetts, looking right out my window at the Homestead, where there's a great deal of work still going on. Just a little bit about our collection. The Emily Dickinson Museum collection includes really thousands of objects, furnishings and personal effects of the Dickinson family's life across the 3 generations of the family who lived here at the Homestead in the Evergreens. When the Homestead was sold out of the Dickinson family in 1916, these objects were packed into an already full Evergreens and have remained largely unexamined since then. So in 2020, we began a 3-year project funded by a federal agency, the Institute for Museum and Library Services, to develop a baseline catalog of all these objects by recording their descriptions, their measurements, photographs, and a kind of simple condition assessment. So, and if we know who the object was associated with, or the manufacturer or date, we record that too. All of this information gives us much better physical and intellectual control over the collection so that we can put it to use more fully in our tours, in our interpretations and programs, and in the future, put it to more use in exhibits. So in the museum's collection are just hundreds, perhaps thousands of ceramics and silver of many different styles and periods. There's cooking and lighting equipment, furniture in a wide variety of styles, including we've counted up to seating for about 100 people. There's artwork ranging from oil paintings and watercolors to engravings, lithographs, photographs, and even sculpture, which reflects the family's intense interest in art. So there are trunks and chests and suitcases for storage and travel. There are souvenirs of trips in the United States and in Europe. There's just this amazing grouping of children's toys and doll clothes, lots of lace and articles of clothing, and just kind of the confused contents of bureau and desk drawers that seem to have been just pulled out and dumped into a box. So, and there are just a lot of things in the collection that in another household might have been discarded. So it's a really a vast collection. When we began this project, we thought we had 6,000 to 8,000 objects, and now we're pretty sure we have 10,000 to 12,000. So we're learning about this every day. But it's a great joy for the museum to have embarked on now what is now really a clear and steady course of collections management and stewardship. And we're just really pleased to be able to share objects with you regularly on social media. And then when the project is completed in 2023, we'll be able to release an online database that can be searched for anyone who's interested in the objects associated with the Dickinson homes. So for today, we'll encounter a few of these artifacts in our walk through Amherst and our walk through Emily's poetry. So enjoy.
Thank you so much, Jane. We're all so excited about the collections project and so excited to be able to share with you some of the wonderful things that are housed at the museum. So along with hearing about those objects, at each stop along the walk, you will enjoy readings of Dickinson poems by our wonderful group of volunteer readers who are here today. Full poem text will appear on the screen as well. But we do want to note that we're citing Dickinson's poems using the annotation F, which indicates the poem as numbered by editor Ralph Franklin. So if you are following along at home and you have your Franklin edition, those are the same versions of the poems you'll see here. You may also notice that closed captioning is available during this program. So you may choose to use that or to turn it off. To turn it on or off, just click on the CC button at the bottom of your toolbar. So now, without further ado, we're going to hop back into our PowerPoint slide deck and begin our walk at the homestead. The homestead was built in 1813 by Dickinson's paternal grandfather. It's a stately brick home on Main Street in Amherst, where Dickinson's life journey began in 1830 and ended on May 15th in 1886. Among the restored spaces you will see at the museum when we reopen this summer is a second floor chamber in the northwest corner of the homestead. This comfortable bedroom adjoins by means of a little pass-through with the poet's own bedroom. And if we go to the next slide, you'll see a picture of both of those rooms. 1 year after the poet's father's 1874 death, her mother had a stroke that left her in a severely weakened state. Here in this room on the left, Mrs. Dickinson's daughters, Emily and Lavinia, or Vinnie, stepped into the role of caretakers, along with their Irish maid, Margaret Marr. In a letter to family friend Mrs. Holland, Dickinson illustrates a simple scene of daily life. Mother is lying changeless on her changeless bed, Vinnie in Bliss's catalog prospecting for summer, Maggie, good and noisy, the north wind of the family. For 7 more years, the women of the homestead bathed and fed Mrs. Dickinson and kept her company around the clock. The nurse's lamp, depicted in our next slide, would have proved a useful tool to keep broth or beef tea warm for their patient. It contained a small oil lamp within and a canister on top where you could rest a bowl. Mrs. Dickinson's remaining years were largely spent in this bedchamber where her care became increasingly strenuous. In 1880, Dickinson records, "Mother will never walk. She still makes little voyages from her bed to her chair in a strong man's arms. Her poor patience loses its way and we lead it back, to read to her, to fan her, to tell her health would come tomorrow and make the counterfeit look real. This is so ensuing that hardly have I said good morning, mother, when I hear myself saying, Mother, good night." This important and compelling chapter of Dickinson's life is perhaps lesser known to many of her devotees. And so at the museum, we're especially excited to share with you that the Northwest Chamber is currently being restored to its 19th century appearance and will be added to the tour when we reopen this summer. When Mrs. Dickinson ultimately died in 1882, the poet wrote to her friend, "All is faith indeed without our vanished mother. And each night I reach finds my lungs more breathless, seeking what it means." With that letter, she enclosed this poem, which will be read today by John and followed by readers Casey, Raymond, and Thackeray.
To the bright east she flies, brothers of paradise, remit her home, without a change of wings, or love's convenient things. enticed to come, fashioning what she is, fathoming what she was. We deem, we dream, and that dissolves the days through which existence strays. Homeless, at home.
Is heaven a physician? They say that he can heal, but medicine posthumous is unavailable. Is heaven an exchequer? They speak of what we owe, but that negotiation I'm not a party to.
My first well day since Menial, I asked to go abroad and take the sunshine in my hands and see the things in pod. A blossom just when I went in to take my chance with pain, uncertain if myself or he should prove the strongest one. The summer deepened while we strove. She put some flowers away, and redder cheeked ones in their stead, a fond, elusive way. To cheat herself, it seemed she tried, as if before a child to fade tomorrow. Rainbows held the sepulchre, could hide. She dealt a fashion to the nut. She tied the hoods to seeds. She dropped bright scrapes of tint about and left Brazilian threads. On every shoulder that she met, then both her hands of haze put up to hide her parting grace from our unfitted eyes. My loss by sickness, was it loss or that ethereal gain? One earns by measuring the grave, then measuring the sun.
Zachary, just making sure you're not muted.
I think I lost signal. I apologize. Let me not mar that perfect dream by an auroral stain, but so to adjust my daily night that it will come again. Not when we know the power accost, the garment of surprise was all our timid mother wore at home in paradise.
Now let's cross a hedge away from the homestead to the Evergreens. On our way, we'll walk the ribbon lane dubbed The Path Just Wide Enough for Two Who Love by Dickinson's niece, Martha. The path was reinstated in 2021. The newly laid crushed stone path traces the original route and will be fully accessible for our visitors. In Dickinson's time, her nieces and nephews bore to Susan next door endless little notes sent in every possible phase of her mood, comments on books she read, cries of the heart, dashes of wit, and poems for suggestion or criticism. Today, traces of Susan and Austin's original garden surface each spring in the blooms of self-sown daffodils. In April, old garden Van Scion daffodils nod their leonine double heads. Van Scions are beloved for their shaggy, eccentric blooms, which differ by the year and the garden. Fittingly, the Evergreens daffodils are streaked with an electric green. See if you can catch a glimpse of the daffodils in the following poems read by Jacqueline, Vincent, Kuhn, and John.
Where ships of purple gently talk on seas of daffodil, fantastic sailors mingle, and then the wharf is still.
Nature rarer uses yellow, then another hue. Saves she all of that for sunsets, prodigal of blue. Spending scarlet like a woman, yellow she affords only scantly and selectly, like a lover's words.
She dwelleth in the ground where daffodils abide. Her maker, her metropolis, the universe, her maid, to fetch her grace and hue, and fairness and renown. The firmaments, to pluck her and fetch her thee, be mine.
I believe John is next. John, are you there?
I'm so sorry. What I can do, I will, though it be little as a daffodil. That I cannot must be unknown to possibility.
We've arrived at the Evergreens next door, home to Austin and Susan Dickinson and their children. Among the most poignant objects in the Evergreens collection are those associated with Dickinson's youngest nephew, Thomas Gilbert Dickinson, or Gib. Gib died of typhoid at the age of 8 and was deeply grieved by his family and many in Amherst. His obituary remarked on his wide circle of friends. People not only played with him to see the child life show itself, but they talked with him for their own pleasure. When the village heard of his death, we felt as if one had gone who had established a place for himself among us. After Gibb's death, Emily wrote to Susan, "I see him in the star and meet his sweet velocity in everything that flies." At the museum, our collections team has recently rediscovered a scrapbook kept by Susan of her son's brief life. In it are treasures, including a lock of his golden hair, his first story, and missives sent to his family. We've included one in our slides where he writes, "Mama, I don't want to come down in the rain this noon. Please send Papa's and my dinner up. Send all you can." These next poems are read by Thackeray, Diana, Anne, and Raymond, and they are tributes to the joys children bring into our lives and the ache they can leave behind.
Bliss is the plaything of the child, the secret of the man, the sacred stealth of boy and girl. Rebuke it if we can.
We learned the whole of love, the alphabet, the words, a chapter, then the mighty book, then revelation closed. But in each other's eyes an ignorance beheld, diviner than the childhood's, and each to each a child, attempted to expound what neither understood. Alas, that wisdom is so large and truth so manifold.
On such a night or such a night, would anybody care if such a little figure slipped quiet from its chair? So quiet, oh, how quiet, that nobody might know, but that the little figure rocked softer to and fro. On such a dawn or such a dawn, would anybody sigh that such a little figure to sound asleep did lie? For chanticleer to wake it, or stirring house below, or giddy bird in orchard, or early task to do? There was a little figure plump for every little knoll, busy needles and spools of thread, and trudging feet from school, playmates and holidays and nuts, and visions vast and small. Strange that the feet so precious, charged, should reach so small a goal.
Quite empty, quite at rest, the robin locks her nest and tries her wings. She does not know a route, but puts her craft about for room it springs. She does not ask for noon. She does not ask for boon, crumbless and homeless, of but one request, the birds she lost.
Beginning with her grandfather's role in its founding and continuing with her father Edward's and brothers Austin's tenure as treasurers, Emily Dickinson family was immersed in the affairs of Amherst College. Lesser known is the fact that in 1933, at the college's 110th commencement, Dickinson's niece, Martha Dickinson Bianchi, became the first woman to receive an honorary degree from the prestigious college. Martha was awarded the Doctor of Letters in honor of her work as a poet, novelist, and editor of 8 volumes of her Aunt Emily Dickinson's writings. Martha's work, beginning with the publication of A Single Hound, Poems of a Lifetime, drew from Susan Dickinson's collection of Emily's poems. She revived interest in her aunt and also painted a rich portrait of family life, clarifying Susan's role as a source of inspiration. While Dickinson was contented that there was no frigate like a book, her worldly and adventurous niece traveled extensively. Martha's personal effects comprise a large portion of the museum's collection today, and they include playbills, ship manifests, and European perfumes and curios, a tribute to her wide circumference. In many ways, Martha lived a divided life, her time split between Amherst and New York City, and establishing her own artistic legacy and then preserving her aunt's. In honor of Martha, Casey, John, Jacqueline, and Pune will read poems of exploration of the self, of the world, and of our homes.
Soto, explore thyself. Therein thyself shalt find the undiscovered continent. No settler had the mind.
I could bring you jewels, had I a mind to, but you have enough of those. I could bring you odors from San Domingo, colors from Veracruz, berries of the Bahamas, have I. But this little blaze, flickering to itself in the meadow, suits me more than those. Never a fellow matched this topaz and his emerald swing. Dower itself for Bobadillo. Better could I bring?
This consciousness that is aware of neighbours and the sun will be the one aware of death, and that itself alone is traversing the interval experience between a most profound experiment appointed unto men. How adequate unto itself its properties shall be, itself unto itself, and none shall make discovery. Adventure most unto itself, the soul condemned to be, attended by a single hound, its own identity.
The things that never can come back are several. Childhood, some forms of hope, the dead, though joys, like men, may sometimes make a journey and still abide. We do not mourn for traveler or sailor, their routes are fair, but think enlarged of all that they will tell us returning here. Here, there are typic here's, foretold locations. The spirit does not stand himself at whatsoever fathom his native land.
Our next stop is the Palmer Block, once the location of Edwards and later Austin Dickinson's law office. After the building burned down during the blizzard of 1888, the Amherst Town Hall was erected on this site. While the office and its records are lost, the museum holds some of the trappings of Edwards' trade, including his leather briefcase and a wallet embossed with his name. Emily Dickinson described her father as the straightest engine and remarked that he never played. In his own words, he dreamed of a life of rational happiness, which for him also implied exertion. To his fiancée, he wrote, "Let me be obliged to accomplish some important and difficult task, and I enjoy myself." His footprints are evident in many of Dickinson's poems, especially in her deft employment of legal jargon. In the poem, "Where bells no more affright the morn," she alludes to his habit of ringing bells to awaken the family. His success at bringing the Amherst and Belchertown Railroad to town is evident in the horrid hooting stanzas of "I like to see it lap the miles." Most touching, perhaps, is the poem "Lay This Laurel on the One." It's a rewriting of Thomas Wentworth Higginson's poem called Decoration, which celebrates a lonely victor. Dickinson told Higginson that his hymn, published the month of Edward's death, assisted the pause of space, which I call Father. So thank you to Diana, Anne, Raymond, and Thackeray for breathing life into these next poems.
Where bells no more affright the morn, where Scrabble never comes, where very nimble gentlemen are forced to keep their rooms, where tired children placid sleep through centuries of noon. This place is bliss, this town is heaven. Please, Potter, pretty soon. Oh, could we climb where Moses stood and view the landscape o'er? Not father's bells nor factories could scare us anymore.
Anne, you're up.
And I believe you're still muted.
Thanks. And then prodigious step around a pile of mountains and supercilious pier in shanties by the sides of roads, and then a quarry pair to fit its sides and crawl between, complaining all the while in horrid hooting stanza, and then chafes itself downhill, and neigh like Bonerges, then prompter than a star, stop, docile and impotent at its own stable door.
I had some things that I called mine, and God that he called his. Till recently, a rival claim disturbed these amities. The property, my garden, which having sown with care, he claims the pretty acre and sends a bailiff there. The station of the parties forbids publicity, but justice is sublimer than arms or pedigree. I'll institute an action. I'll vindicate the law. Jove, choose your counsel. I retain Shaw.
Lay this laurel on the one, too intristic for renown. Laurel, veil your deathless tree, him you chasten, that is he.
We have now arrived at the house on today's Pleasant Street in Amherst, where Dickinson and her family moved when she was 9. They returned to the family homestead and the poet's birthplace in 1855 when she was 24. Having spent the entirety of her tween and teenage years in this place, moving away was understandably challenging for Dickinson. She wrote to a friend, "I cannot tell you how we moved. I had rather not remember. I believe my effects were brought in a bandbox and the deathless me on foot not many moments after. I am out with lanterns looking for myself." The bandbox pictured here at the museum is a rare survival, considering the ephemeral nature of these pasteboard and wallpaper workhorses. Perhaps the poet's attachment to this place had less to do with her effects than with the fond girlhood memories made there. Attending Amherst Academy just a quarter of a mile up the road, Dickinson had a tight-knit group of friends, including Abaya Palmer Root, Harriet Merrill, Sarah Tracy, and Abby Wood. The poet called this our circle of five. Apple TV's hit show Dickinson evoked the character of Abby Wood seen here. When the show wrapped in 2021, the museum was given a collection of costumes, props, and furnishings from the show, including this gown worn by Abby to a Homestead house party. While TV's Emily grows increasingly circumspect of this friend group, Dickinson's preserved letters demonstrate deep and abiding friendships, and her poems weigh girlhood as a precious, if fleeting, thing. Let's hear some now from Pune, Vincent, Anne, and Casey.
We talked as girls do, fond and late. We speculated fair on every subject but the grave. Of ours, none affair. We handled destinies as cool as we disposers be, and God a quiet party to our authority. But fondest dwelt upon ourself as we eventual be, when girls to women softly raised, we occupy degree. We parted with a contract to cherish and to write, but heaven made both impossible before another night.
Ribbons of the year, multitude brocade, worn to nature's party once, then as flung aside as a faded bead or a wrinkled pearl. Who shall charge the vanity of the maker's girl?
I tie my hat, I crease my shawl. Life's little duties do precisely as the very least were infinite to me. I put new blossoms in the glass and throw the old away. I push a petal from my gown that anchored there. I weigh the time 'twill be till 6 o'clock, so much have I to do. And yet existence some way back stopped, struck my ticking through. We cannot put ourselves away as a completed man or woman. When errands done, we came to flesh upon there may be miles on miles of naught, of action, sicker far. To simulate is stinging work to cover what we are. From science and from surgery to telescopic eyes, to bear on us unshaded, for their sake, not for ours. Therefore, we do life's labor, though life's reward be done, with scrupulous exactness to hold our senses on.
This quiet dust was gentlemen and ladies, and lads and girls, was laughter and ability and sighing, and frocks and curls. This passive place, a summer's nimble mansion, where bloom and bees exist in oriental circuit, then cease like these.
We arrive now at our final stop on our poetry walk. From the windows of the family's Pleasant Street home, the poet looked out on the cemetery that would become her final resting place in 1886. Emily Dickinson has long been associated with the color white, thanks in part to the posthumous persona crafted by editor Mabel Loomis Todd. However, several correspondences from individuals who knew her document appearances of the poet dressed in white after 1870. Friend and literary mentor Thomas Wentworth Higginson described his first meeting with the poet that same year. A step like a pattering child's, and in glided a little plain woman with two smooth bands of reddish hair, in a very plain and exquisitely clean white piqué, and a blue net worsted shawl. While very few original articles of the poet's clothing remain, one iconic garment nods tantalizingly to her sartorial preference. The poet's house dress, or wrapper, was machine stitched and cut from cotton fabric with mother of pearl buttons. The loose fit and comparably slim silhouette of the dress was non-restrictive of movement and therefore common for women performing everyday house chores. Though the poet herself never mentions only wearing white as an adult, the color does appear in her writing, often imbued with symbolic meaning, as she evokes a wedding dress, a beloved ghostly flower known to her as an Indian pipe, and even the color of the grave. In this next favorite poem, which will be read by the museum's executive director, Jane Wald, the color takes on a white heat, imbued with the power of creative thought.
There you see the soul at the white heat, then crouch within the door. Red is the fire's common tint. But when the vivid ore has vanquished flame's conditions, it quivers from the forge without a color, but the light of unanointed blaze. Least village has its blacksmith, whose anvil's even ring stands symbol for the finer forge that soundless tugs within, refining these impatient ores with hammer and with blaze until the designated light repudiate the forge.
Thank you, Jane. That designated light of Dickinson's own forging remains ever brighter. Just look at all of you who have gathered with us in memory today. We all hail from around the world, but in the poetry of Emily Dickinson, we recognize a revolutionary voice that speaks to our shared experiences, our most ineffable ideas, our human kinship in this strange world. We hope that you've been transported to Amherst today, even if just for an hour, and we're so looking forward to sharing our singular museum collection and Dickinson's restored home with you when you can visit in person. So here to tell you more about that, again, is Jane Wald.
So while we've been closed for the pandemic and restoration for 2.5 long years, we've sorely missed sharing an in-person experience of Emily Dickinson's place with thousands of visitors. On the other hand, we've thoroughly enjoyed contemplating poetry with you and so many more who join us in these virtual programs like this one today. When we reopen this summer, there will be 5 newly restored spaces for you to see, and at last, heating and cooling that will take good care of our collections. And then also this summer, we'll be doing a similar kind of heating and cooling project at the Evergreens. So ultimately, we'll end up in a much better place than we've been. Right now, we are seeing exciting daily changes at the Homestead and are eager to announce our reopening date next month. So we urge you to sign up for our mailing list to be among the first to know the date and to arrange your own visit here where we can welcome you in person. We're truly grateful to those who've given to the museum in support of this tremendous restoration project and for the free virtual programs like this one today. Speaking of those gifts and all the gifts of the readers who have shared their readings of Dickinson's poetry with us today, For each donation that we receive during the registration for this program, we are placing a daisy on Dickinson's grave to mark this 136th anniversary of her death. Many of you chose to remember your own loved ones as you made these gifts and have found deep meaning in linking their memory to the words of comfort and experience that Emily Dickinson has left to us. So let's go now to West Cemetery, where a small group of the museum staffers are laying daisies and sharing poems.
I tend my flowers for thee, bright absentee. My fuchsia's coral seams rip while the sower dreams. Geraniums tint and spot, low daisies dot. My cactus splits her beard to show her throat. Carnations tip their spice, and bees pick up a hyacinth I hit. Puts out a ruffled head, and odors fall from flasks so small, you marvel how they held. Globe roses break their satin flake upon my garden floor. Yet thou, not there, I had as leaf they bore, no crimson more. Thy flower be gay, her lord away, it ill becometh me. I'll dwell in calyx gray, I'll modestly alway, thy daisy draped for thee.
So has the daisy vanished from the fields today, so tiptoed many a slipper to paradise away. Oozed so in crimson bubbles, day's departing tide, blooming, tripping, flowing, are ye then with God?
So thank you to Team Daisy at West Cemetery, Pippa, Sean, and Marty. Now, it wouldn't be the poetry walk if we did not conclude with a final toast, which we would like all of you to join us in saying. So we're going to put the text of one final short poem into the chat for all to read. And I'm going to go into our wonderful gallery view so that you can see all of today's amazing readers. And we're going to read this final Dickinsonian benediction aloud together in one cacophonous, joyful toast. So is the poem in the chat yet? Let's pop it in there one more time just in case you missed it. And there it is for everybody. And now I'll invite everyone to raise their glass and join me in saying, in the
name
of the bee
and
and
of
of the butterfly and of the breeze. Amen. Thank you, everyone. Cheers. That concludes the 2022 Poetry Walk, and it has been an absolute pleasure to spend time with all of you today. Thank you to those who have attended. A very special thank you to today's poetry readers. We have Vincent, Casey, Raymond, Jane, Poon, John, Jacqueline, Thackeray, Anne, and Diana. Thank you so much for lending your voice this morning. If you enjoyed the poetry today, you might also enjoy our upcoming May edition of the Phosphorescence Poetry Reading Series, which features contemporary poets Quentin Collins, Meg Kearney, and Denise Lowe. So you can register for that free program online. It's coming right up at the end of May on May 26th. And then in June, we will be bringing you our first in-person program at the museum since 2020. So you've got to come for that. Garden Days returns on June 11th and 12th. So that's a wonderful weekend when volunteers help us to bring the Homestead gardens back to life. So if you want to come sink your hands into Emily Dickinson's dirt, we could sure use your help. And you do that under the guidance of Master Gardener and Dickinson Scholar Marta McDowell. For more information about these programs or to learn more about us or make a contribution to the work that we do at the museum, you can visit us at emilydickinsonmuseum.org. We're popping that link in the chat. Perfect. Thank you, Elizabeth. And we just want to say thank you once again. We hope you all have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Thanks, everybody. Here's to you, readers. Take care. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.